Hey there, so today I wanted to make a quick video on curl. Let's go through it. So the first thing you want to do is just make sure you have curl. So you can do that kind of easily by just going to your command line and typing curl. And if you actually get, this kind of error and it shows you, hey, try curl help or curl manual, you know you're in good shape because you have curl. If you don't get anything back or you get some kind of error saying not installed, then you probably need to install it. But good news for you is if you're on the latest version of Windows or if you have the latest version of Mac, you already have curl built in. And even if you go back a few years, you can still get curl on your Mac or Windows pretty easily. If you don't have it, you can download it from curl.hacks.se over here, and it'll show you instructions on every single machine how to install it. So the next thing we want to talk about is how to use curl. Like, what does it do? So you can think of it kind of like, if it's easier for you to remember, see a URL, right? And so what URL do you want to see? Maybe this one. So here I've got JSON placeholder tippycode.com, and this is a free API that I really like. I'm going to refresh the page here, and basically you can see I've got a URL here, and it's this one. It has what's called an endpoint, and so the endpoint is to-dos/1, and then here's a whole bunch of other endpoints: posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, users. So you can play around with this API. It's free. You don't have to actually, put in your email or anything like that to get an API key. You can just take the endpoint URL and just for kicks, we'll try it here, and we should expect back a JSON response. And so in the same way you can use fetch with JavaScript, you can use curl in your command line and put in the URL along with an endpoint. So rather than put, the to-dos, I want to see the posts. So I'm going to type out posts here, and I get back all the posts that I have from this JSON placeholder, which is pretty nice. So it's an easy way to basically look at something, maybe an API, without having to actually go and make a fetch request. You can just do it within your terminal. And so a lot of times, like when I'm working with documentation like this, it won't say fetch, it'll just say curl. And that's because there are many different ways and many different programming languages that you can go out and make a request. Fetch isn't the only way. You can also use AJAX and JavaScript, or XML HTTP requests. So there are many different ways to access a particular URL, and as long as that URL is configured to receive API requests, you should be good to go. That's the key point, I think. You can't just start making requests to every single website and expecting JSON. Like if I were to do curl https www.google.com, I'm not going to get JSON. I'm instead going to just get HTML. And, this is, something that wouldn't be really easy to read in a terminal. I'd rather probably want to go to my browser and take a look at it. But we're not trying to get JSON response with google.com. However, if we were interested in downloading the page, we could use some flags, right? And this is where curl gets kind of like a little bit hairy. So what do these different flags mean? So I'm going to show you what those flags mean. So we've covered both of those two posts here, but now we want to talk about these flags. So the little o right here basically means, okay, I want to save a copy of my web page locally. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what it says. But so let's bring back our little terminal here, and now it's a lot bigger. So I'm going to clear out the command line, and then I'm just going to say curl -o, and then let's see, your file name and then URL. So use this to save a copy of your web page locally. So let's say we want to download, maybe that response from tippycode. So I'm going to go back up on my keyboard and see if I can get to it. All right, it's not letting me, so I'm going to have to zoom out and basically just go over to JSON placeholder one more time. And then, okay, let's just grab this URL with endpoint. Okay, and then I'll go back to my terminal. And then I'm going to fix this a little bit, and I'm just going to say, all right, we'll call this payload.json, and then I'll put in the URL. Press enter, and okay, cool. Now you see this little statement here that says 100% downloaded, 100% received, 83, I believe, 83% relieved, and then this was the speed. You can think of it as kind of like bits per second. So after I type open and then the dot to basically get to my particular folder, I can see the payload JSON here, and then I can right click on it if I want and open it with Visual Studio Code and get a easier friendly way of looking at this particular response, as opposed to reading it in a terminal. You know, I don't want to read it in a terminal. I'd rather use my code editor, which can show me this JSON in pretty format, which would be pretty nice, especially if I got a lot of JSON coming back. So that's one nice thing about using the cURL-O command. We also have the cURL-big O command, which allows us to save a file or an image from, you know, a specific website. So I'll also do that just real quick. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and let's say that, you know, this time I want to download some media. So let's say, actually, yeah, you know what? I'll use this Instagram image. So the first thing I would do is inspect, and then I would just need to know what the URL is. And so I could probably go in here and let's see, I think it's just one more layer up. There it is. Okay, copy. So copy link address, and then come back over here and then just type cURL-big O, and then I'd press enter, and that would download that particular image to my computer. And I could again check, see what I downloaded, and I think it was this particular thing. And yeah, it's just a little bit formatted weird because you know, there's some extra parameters after the image name, but I just would want to look for the JPEG, you know, part right here, and so you can see it right there. So okay, press enter, and then just use JPG. So now it's an image that I've downloaded from my computer. So you can see, like, you know, curl is pretty powerful, especially if you know what you're doing. You can even use, you know, a scripting language like Python or Node.js essentially to help you make curl requests or fetch requests behind the scenes, and then download images for you programmatically, which is pretty cool. Some apps do that and allow you to kind of like access Instagram and then just download images as you need. The cURL-V is also pretty important. It gives you a verbose, you know, output as far as like when you make a curl request. So let's do that as well. cURL-V, https www.google.com, and you can see now I get back all this, you know, information. Here's all the HTML that came with that particular web page. But you can also see that when I started, you know, before I even got to google.com, you know, I had to go to this IP address, which I'm guessing is also the IP address for google.com. And so yeah, it is. And then you can see how, like, you know, the curl command went through each step of the way, like with whatever it's doing behind the scenes underneath the hood. Okay, it had to, you know, connect to this IP at port 443, which we know is SSL. And then also it checked the certificate, then it made some handshakes with TLS, basically SSL connections. Then got the certificate, and then, you know, using HTTP2, the newer form of HTTP's protocol, we were able to get google.com, and then you can see that the user agent that we tried to use was curl. So it's a lot more detail about what exactly is going on under the hood. The regular curl command just gives you just basically only the response body back, which is this HTML, or, you know, again, if the API is configured a certain way, it'll give you back JSON instead. It depends on how the API is set up. And so some APIs really kind of put you through the ringer and really make you work to get information, just like Facebook. Facebook, you have to create a login first, and then you have to request permissions. So if I want to access Instagram, I have to set those up as part of my permissions and then get an access token. So once I have the access token, then I can say, all right, I got the permission to check out Instagram basic and pages show list from Facebook. Then I can use that access token over here along with my URL that I want to get to, and then I can use curl to basically start working through the API. So that's kind of like how curl works. Actually, I'll answer the questions on what, you know, these particular flags are. So if you're ever confused, you can always go over to the curl manual and you can scroll down. I know sometimes this can be a little bit of a pain, so I'll help you with a shortcut. You can do a Command F, and then because all of these flags end with a comma, if you want to clean up a little bit, so let's say I want to get curl-I, I can just go over here and then type lowercase I, be case specific, and then comma. And then that limits my results down to 13, but that's a little bit easier to read than 53. So I can just jump around here and try to look, and basically here I get, all right, that's uppercase I, and then lowercase I. All right, so include the HTTP response headers in the output. So essentially, when I make a request, I want to get back the headers as well. So let's do that for google.com, curl-I. And then let's take a look at our response. And there are all the headers that came back with this particular response, which is pretty cool. And then let's look for the X command, capital X. Okay, so just have to go through this a little bit. Again, it's a little bit of a pain, but I prefer this way as opposed to the man curl, because that would mean reading inside the terminal, and that's even more frustrating. So I would rather just do it on an actual web page. So here we go. This is the request command, and basically it says specifies a custom request method to use when communicating with the HTTP server. By default, it's a GET request. And if you remember, there are 4 types of requests. There's the GET request, there is the POST request, there is the PUT request, and the DELETE request. So when you want to get data from a website, you would use the GET request. And here we're saying we want to get users' pages, as well as get Instagram business account, as well as media objects. We're not doing any posting right now, but we could if we wanted to. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that. You can use the curl-D command here and pass in some data in the form of JSON and make a post request, and we can do that real quick as well. I'm going to go ahead and just do curl-D. I'm just going to play again with this particular API. So here what I will do is just take this string, take this response, and then go to my console, inspect, and just for simplicity, I'm just going to say JSON, stringify, and then I'll put in this object here and press enter, and I'll get back a string of this particular object. So I'll copy this and I will put it here in my curl request, and then I have curl-D, and then I want to send it up to maybe an endpoint. So let's go ahead and put it up in to-dos. In fact, let's see if there's a guide for it. So update a request, or let's actually see, create one. So this is the post request. So I can do it just like this. I'm going to take this URL endpoint, and so this would be how I would do it in fetch. I would send a body with a JSON stringify of the object I want to send, along with headers. And so I could do that here. I could just press this and press enter, and let's see here. I have a response that says unmatched close brace bracket and URL position 22. So there was an error, and basically that was because over here I had a string that was missing a quote on this side, and so what I did was I revised it to just have a single quote here and a single quote here, and then everything inside would just have double quotes for JSON. Now when I press enter, it basically takes a couple seconds, but now we get back a real response, which is exactly what we see over here too. So good to go, and essentially we've created a new post for our API. And so that's how you would use the curl-D command. There's also curl-user and curl-h. I guess curl-h is also pretty important. This is when you want to send headers with curl, and sometimes you may need to do that. You can also, again, get to the manual in the terminal if you want to read, the curl instructions from here and get, even more details. But like I said, sometimes reading in the terminal is just like a pain. I would not want to read in the terminal. I would rather read on a website. So in any case, I hope that this entire tutorial was pretty useful for you and you are a little bit more confident now with how to use curl. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.